So, welcome to YKJ Japan. Today, I'm not at the mud pond, as you can see. I am basically, this is 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm checking the fish in our fish house. They're just actually now finishing off their 11 o'clock feed. Things are going very nicely here. This pond is predominantly Nisai, some Sanzai in here as well. And over here is Sanzai upwards. This Karashi you can see here is Nisai now. It's about 79 to 80 cm thereabouts. Huge thing. Obviously it will be Sanzai this coming autumn. But an absolute monster of a fish. Fish are doing really well, conditions really good. In this pond they've still got a little bit of food left to clear. Fish house temperature at the moment, we're at 39 degrees inside here. They're pretty warm. Roof is slightly open at the moment. Roof is automatic and opens and closes according to air temperature within the fish house. Things are looking good. Everything's running well. Fish are progressing nicely. So hopefully through this summer, we've got lower numbers. It looks like it's overstocked, and of course it's slightly higher stock than ideal, but much better stock really than last year and the year before. So fish are doing that much better, I think. And the younger fish also, I think, are doing that much better. So Nisai this year, as Sanzai in the autumn, they should range from, I would say, about 66 centimetres through to a little over 70 as Sanzai. That's the plan at least. Now water in here, compared to the mud pond, is very, very different. This is borehole water, which is coming through. Our borehole is 83 meters deep, and the water that's coming through is basically coming through granite feldspars, and is effectively very kind of heavily filtered out by all the rock. And the water comes into the pond with a TDS, I think, of about 53 ppm if memory serves. I think that's what it's at. I need to double check. And typically runs around the pH of 7.0, sometimes down to 6.8 thereabouts. So very soft and relatively low pH. Fish progress really well. Slightly different environment to the mud pond. The mud pond is basically mountain water and spring water that goes into that. And consequently the mud pond itself, our mud pond runs with a TDS of around about 30 parts per million, so softer than this, and the pH tends to run 7 or just under, and yeah, so it's a different kind of environment. Mud pond, I think, is particularly well suited for Tosai through the Nisai. That, I think, is where it comes into its own really. I think because Tosai going through to Nisai in a mud pond, I think you're still at quite a crucial stage of development with those age fish, and I think they do benefit from the extra food resources that are in that mud pond, and also the depth of water as well. Basically that environment, I think, tends to build up the skeletal structure a little bit better, so I think using concrete pond, I think from Nisai onwards is better, or Sanzai onwards is better. Tosai in the mud pond, I think there is an advantage of using that. And then from Nisai or Sanzai onwards, keeping the fish then in concrete environment, I think is really good, provided you can control the water well. Now the advantage with the mud pond is that you've got basically free running, free heating, free everything. Obviously there's running costs of going to the mud pond and visiting, and the feed inside of it it's very heavy. Now, the summer in the mud pond is very condensed. It's really typically from the end of, or certainly second half of July really, through until end of September, early October is where the fish really put on all the growth. So their growing period is very condensed. Breeders typically put fish into the mud pond in April, May time, but that really is actually more so to make space for breeding, so that they can use their premises and ponds for breeding fish, and also so that once the fish are in the mud pond, they can then concentrate on basically getting on with the breeding rather than doing pond maintenance all day every day. So it's better that they put fish in the mud pond April, May time. A lot of breeders, they tend to be late, maybe sort of into sort of middle of June, that kind of thing, or even end of June. Omosako tend to put their fish out a little bit later. But once the fish are in the mud pond, they can more or less forget about them. And then summer starts really after the rainy season, so really from about a week or so ago is when the summer really starts here and when the fish really start growing. And August, September are the main months for growing, and that growing period for Tosai at least is really, really strong, because if you consider it, people would be forgiven for thinking that fish go into the mud pond and basically spend half a year in there, and that's not actually the case. Whilst they might spend half a year in there or 4 or 5 months in there, that growing period is really, in realistic terms, about 2.5 months, something like that, is the actual physical growing period. So Tosai in a mud pond environment, if you look at it as being a 2.5 month duration, or let's say 10 weeks duration, the fish really are going to be putting on, let's say 2 centimeters a week, something like that, in a mud pond environment. You're not really going to get that in a concrete pond if you try and raise Tosai in a concrete pond, and if you did, it would be at the expense of the colour holding together well, so the colour would get washed out quite quickly, even with colour food, and it would be just really difficult to get the same result. So a mud pond with Tosai, I think, is particularly good, and that is why I think, for me, our mud pond is so exciting for me to raise fish. So after that, from there on, keeping fish in this kind of environment, in an indoor pond, fish house if you like, it's more controllable. You can see the fish on a day-to-day basis. The actual growth in terms of centimeters per week is slower, but you can kind of make up for lost time, because within a concrete pond you can basically control the environment more. So if you think of it as coiling a mud pond growing for, let's say, 10 weeks of actual condensed growth, in a concrete pond environment you may have the fish in there for the same physical length of time being grown and fed, as it were, as a mud pond, but in reality it's not really 10 weeks of growing. You're doing maybe 20 weeks of growing or more, so you can make do with getting half the amount of growth and having it over a longer period of time, because the result at the end of the day with older fish, knee high onwards, is really going to be the same, or in many cases in a concrete fish house or concrete pond environment like this, you can actually get a better result with this than you can with a mud pond. Even if it is actually less growth per week, it's more weeks of growth that you actually get during the summer season. So for me, I prefer this kind of environment for raising knee high onwards. It's, like I say, you can see things day to day, control things from day to day. So I think mud pond for Tosai, concrete pond for knee high onwards, I think this is really the best overall combination for raising fish, and for me, I feel puts us into a very envious position here, or at least envious to hobbyists in the Western world. Not really envious for breeders, I mean they're doing the same thing anyway. So but yeah, it's different environment, different water. Even if this is really soft, mud pond is that much softer, so it is a different environment, different raising technique, different kind of development, and all in all, the combination of the two works like a charm. Thank you for watching.